the weirdest of the weird stuff, I think. And I have to admit, I'm going to admit right up top, I am a fan of wrestling. I'm a wrestling fan. I've watched AEW every year that they've come to Austin since they started touring, I think. Just watched them a few months ago when they were here. Fun stuff. They put on a great show. But I haven't really been keeping up with WWE. Like, I haven't really paid attention to WWE pretty much since, like, the Attitude Era. Like, whenever The Rock, left to do the Scorpion King was about the last time I really paid attention to WWE. But I'm starting to pay attention now because there's just some crazy stuff in the news. It came out some weeks ago, maybe months ago. Vince McMahon was forced to resign as the result of allegations of sexual misconduct or sexual assault or something. I didn't really pay too much attention to it. It's been well established that Vince McMahon is a complete and total frothing of the mouth psycho, so it wasn't surprising. Triple H, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, or whatever his actual name is, I always forget. He was the one who kind of took over the reins, along with Stephanie McMahon, Vince's daughter. She kind of became the CEO, and they started doing their own thing. And it seemed like Vince was just going to float off into a retirement for a while. I say for a while because then he came roaring back in like a vicious, hostile takeover, right? Scenes right out of Succession, it sounds like, and muscled his way back into the CEO position, which resulted in Stephanie McMahon resigning and a bunch of others resigning, and then what started brewing over the last few days is the supposed sell of the WWE to various bidders, the most prominent of which getting the most time and the headline space being Saudi Arabia. So for someone that just doesn't really pay much attention, this was like kind of out of the left field. So I'm gonna try to educate myself a little bit on what's going on here. I'm looking at the Cage Side Seat Sports Nation broadcast blog here. They have the rumor roundup here for events selling WWE wrestler, pushback, Regal title, and more. So let's see if we could get a brief overview before we dive into some of like the meatier subject matter here. Now, I've got a couple videos that I want to watch too. Speculating around the rumors surrounding pro wrestling is a favorite pastime of many fans, perhaps second only to actually watching the matches. In this daily column, we take a look at the latest rumors being churned out by the Pro Wrestling Mill. Yo, what's up, RJ? Now the rumor is that, it changes so frequently. Now the rumor is that it's either going to be Disney, ESPN, or rival wrestling company AEW merging and buying WWE, with the Khan family putting in a massive bid. To me, that's like the worst case scenario. I really hope that doesn't happen. Like, as much as I hope the Saudi Arabia thing doesn't happen, I also don't want AEW to purchase it as well. Like, a part of where I lost interest in wrestling, honestly, came when the then or maybe it was WWE at that time, started purchasing all the other different wrestling outlets out there, be it WCW or all of the regional ones. And then like once they just started to concentrate, it just got super lame. There was no competition. Like I don't want like, part of what makes AEW awesome is that it's not WWE, that it's its own thing, that it's competing, and they're encouraged to be young and fresh and energetic and its own separate thing. And the second that they merge or buy WWE or anything like that, all of that goes away. And the same problems that encompass WWE will encompass them. So I hope that doesn't happen. But again, this is like just a very weird out of nowhere, well, for me, out of nowhere, because I haven't really been paying attention to wrestling. So it's fascinating. If nothing else, this is a fascinating circumstance that's surrounding WWE ownership. Not for the, like, if only just for the Vince McMahon component to all of it, but we can get into that a little bit later. Important reminder, Rumors are just that, rumors. None of this has been confirmed as fact. It's just circulating around the pro wrestling rumor mill. We track rumor accuracy in a weekly feature called Rumor Look Back. You can find it here. Remember, take it all with a grain of salt. Fair point. Rumors of the day. Well, it's clear the sale of WWE to Saudi Arabia isn't the, quote, done deal it was being discussed as on Tuesday night. There remains a lot of speculation that it could happen. It's fueled by the precise wording of denials, the lack of any comment from WWE about the story, even as it appeared to have an effect on the stock price. Well, I mean, that's probably just a function of Saudi Arabia being an active bidder. Like, they may not have won the bidding, but if they're an active bidder, then they're not going to have any comment on that until the sale is finalized. So, in discussing the tweets falsely reporting a sale and their impact on early Wednesday trading, CNBC's David Faber said he's heard quote from prospective buyers that it's very much unclear if Vince McMahon would really want to sell this thing. Wrestling Observer. I mean, well, let me click on that and see why he thinks that. I don't know if Disney would be a good option either. Sure, they could use it to bolster ESPN and ESPN Plus, but does WWE fit their business model? Would they dramatically change the presentation and vibes? Saudi Arabia buying the company would be horrible because there's a lot of wrestlers with moral religious beliefs that prevent them from participating in Saudi shows. And the treatment of women too. Yeah, as far as Disney is concerned, the fact that Disney also owns ESPN, I think that it wouldn't be that much of an outlier with their sports and sports entertainment related section of the media empire that they have. Like, WWE would just fold right into and ESPN's been struggling in the past few years anyways. So, one thing that they would benefit from is, do they air Raw? I don't even know where Raw airs, or if they have anything that airs on anything other than, actually, I haven't watched WWE in so long, I don't even know what stations they air on anymore. But if they can get some exclusivity on an ESPN network or on ABC, then yeah, that could be very beneficial for them if they can, turn around and make WWE as popular, or at least seem like it's as on the come up as AEW does. That could be very beneficial for Disney. I think it would fit right in. It might prevent them from, I don't know. The Disney ownership might prevent them from being maybe as extreme in some of their content as they had been in the past, but maybe not. Just because it's Disney doesn't mean that they're, honor bound to be rated G in all of its content. As far as Saudi Arabia goes, though, that's a whole different ball of wax, and I've got some videos here talking about their relationship with Saudi Arabia that I want to watch too. Like, Saudi Arabia, the royal family, who would extensively be the ownership group here, for all intents and purposes, they have deep pockets. They could definitely afford to win this bidding if they felt so compelled to win it. I don't know how the FTC would react to that. Like, I don't know if there's any political ramifications for it. I don't know if there would be a push from the federal government to block that particular, selling that particular asset to Saudi Arabia. They are technically an ally country, although I will argue that they really aren't. But it just seems to me like there would be other issues that would make such a thing fraught. Maybe if we still had a Trump administration, he would be out there championing this, louder than anyone. He's kind of close with he's close with the McMahons. I mean, Vince's wife was in his cabinet, and he's close with the Saudi royal family. Like, he pretty much let MBS off the hook. I mean, everybody did. Even Joe Biden did, after Biden campaigned to hold him to account he still turned around and was like, nah. So, maybe that's not as grand a point as it would seem, but there is a lot of negative. There's a lot of heat that comes with allowing it to be sold to Saudi Arabia as well. So I don't know. It's a weird situation. Raw airs on the USA Network, which is owned by NBC Universal Comcast, and SmackDown is on Fox. Both of the current contracts expire this year and next, which is why Vince wants to sell now. Okay, well that makes perfect sense. That would be perfect then for Disney, because then they wouldn't have to worry about those contracts, and they could move both of those programs onto their own networks, whether they want to air. Like, they could put Raw on ABC and then put SmackDown on ESPN, or vice versa, or whatever other networks they want to use, and not have to worry about any kind of weird contract negotiation around it. That would work out pretty well for them if they could get it for the right price. And you have to imagine that maybe the rumors of Saudi Arabia being front runners and purchasing it isn't in a bid to drive up the asking price. Maybe Disney was this close to actually acquiring it, and they're trying to see if they could squeeze a little bit more money out of them. All of these kind of negotiations are especially the ones that play out in the media. You can't take it at face value. There's always something else going on behind the scenes that we're just not privy to. They've got a huge partnership with Comcast Universal with the USA Network. Why is that being cut off? That's really annoying that this text is being cut off. They've got a huge partnership with Comcast Universal with the USA Network TV rights contract and Peacock streaming for the PPVs and content library. But when does their contracts for the PPVs and content library end? Are those tied into the same broadcasting contracts for their network shows, or is that like a different one? If that's a different one, then if that's a different contract, then that would remain in place. And I'm not sure if that would change either way. I don't know if Disney would want to introduce a pay-per-view mechanism to Disney Plus. But or maybe they would do it with Hulu. I don't know. They do have Hulu too. That's a good question. I'm not for sure. Peacock was a recent deal they made, I want to say around 2020. Yeah, so then their Peacock deal might stay in place. They might do, if Disney did purchase it, then they could still just do PPVs on Peacock and have their broadcast shows on their own networks. It would be interesting. You could always convince someone to rework a contract too, just so long as it remains advantageous for NBC.
Overnight from somebody saying that the Saudis were going to buy it. That got deleted. Wasn't true to begin with. But it has had the effect of sending the stock up a bit more. What I am hearing is you may see a process. You might see some books go out, a couple of investment banks being hired to send books out and say, hey, are you interested? But I also hear from prospective buyers that it's very much unclear whether Vince McMahon really would want to sell this thing. And if he were to, he'd still want to run it, potentially. Do you really want Vince McMahon, working for you, so to speak? So some doubt out there as to not whether or not you might see some sort of
it really
process,
did skyrocket,
really would end up with this asset actually being sold. And again, the Saudi thing doesn't, at this point, it doesn't appear to have a lot behind it right now.
Well, I know that when Strauss Zelnick,
you would need, by the way, if you were Endeavor, you would need, if you were going to do it, one would expect you would want outside help in some way, maybe sort of like, again, this is all speculation.
Right.
But we'll keep an eye on those shoes. You can see they're reversing a bit. Again, that tweet had been deleted, I believe, sure. Carl, from earlier.
That's right.
From some gentleman associated with wrestling and marketing overall. Not that the PIF is not aggressive. The Saudis are. But let's just take a step back and see. Books haven't even gone out yet, if in fact they do.
Anyways, man, we were talking about WWE and ended up watching fucking Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force teach Wing Chun. My ADHD could take me to some weird places sometimes. I think I was here on the Ring of Wrestling show. Dave Shoemaker said Vince McMahon is back at WWE's corporate office this week and working pretty exclusively on a sell of the company. On a recent episode of his What Happened When podcast, Conrad Thompson claimed he's heard that if Nick Khan helps facilitate the sale of WWE, he'll earn a bonus worth more than AEW's TV contract is for a year. Well, I mean, if ever you need incentive, I guess. There have been multiple wrestlers who have told me they'd leave WWE if the company ends up being Saudi Arabia-led, Sean Ross Sapp tweeted. That's the interesting part. And to your point, RJ, I think that's actually a very big component. Like, Saudi Arabia is not the most progressive society, in the world there. And while MBS Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been making efforts to put a progressive face on modern Saudi Arabia, that's like been a big driver of his, because he recognizes, contrary to popular opinion, you do not go broke exclusively by going woke. Going woke can actually net you a lot of money from people who think that you aren't a frothing out the mouth, raving psychopath. And it's a pretty tough image that Saudi Arabia has to shake as being, frothing at the mouth, raving psychopaths of the Middle East. They want to get that money. They want to get that business. And they've had an interest in attracting more business to Saudi Arabia. But understandably speaking, people are a little bit cautious about going there, operating there, especially people that have diverse businesses, diverse companies, or who sell to diverse clientele. I can't sit here and pretend to be an expert in Saudi Arabian culture, society, or history. Suffice it to say that recent history has not shown them in a good light with the brutal execution of the New York Times journalist Jamal Khashoggi, and their ongoing efforts of genocide in Yemen. It's a tough sell. It's a tough sell, but they're trying to soften their image at least, and they've used the WWE in that capacity for several years. There's actually this article here, and this is from several years ago. This is from 2018. Why is WWE creating propaganda for Saudi Arabia? Friday's crown jewel in Riyadh will likely be another infomercial for the monarchy disguised as pro wrestling. I remember reading reviews of this event, and they were not kind. They were not kind at all. They basically called it as much. They just said it was an infomercial. They said the matches were lame. Again, I haven't watched WWE in ages, but if I was going to start, I certainly wouldn't start with this one. They only just recently finally let women wrestle in Saudi Arabia, but they have to dress very differently and cover themselves. WWE has a contract with Saudi Arabia to do like 2-3 shows a year through 2027, I believe. Well, I mean, I really do wonder if it's actually netting a benefit for Saudi Arabia, if it's been proven to be a good investment for them. Maybe in the area, I don't know. Maybe in the area it's putting them in a good light, but for everyone outside of Saudi Arabia, particularly people in the West, I don't think it makes much of a difference in how we perceive them. In the aftermath of the assassination of Jamal Khashoggi inside Saudi Arabia's consulate in Istanbul, the reaction in the business community was swift. Several American businesses received pressure to stop doing business with the kingdom, and many pulled out of the country, at least for the time being. But others have stuck with Saudi Arabia, including one whose enmeshment with the royal family has probably received the most attention in recent weeks. World Wrestling Entertainment, the largest purveyor of professional wrestling on the planet. This Friday, exactly 1 month after Khashoggi was killed, WWE will produce their... Oh man, it was that soon. It was only a month after? WWE will produce their second show in partnership with the Saudis, WWE Crown Jewel in Riyadh. The first show, April's greatest Royal Rumble in Jeddah, I'm guessing that's pronounced Jeddah, is basically Exhibit A for the backlash against WWE. The event was almost entirely a lengthy propaganda infomercial for the kingdom, pushing local tourism, the claimed social progress of the country under Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and hostility towards Iran? Wait, that was part of the show? Hostility towards Iran? Vince McMahon's WWE is pushing anti-Iran propaganda for Saudi Arabia. Oh no. I didn't know about this little tidbit. The kingdom is paying top dollar for these bouts, and it's getting its money's worth, apparently. Whoa. Saudi Arabia used the men of the World Wrestling Entertainment, owned by the husband of Trump cabinet member Linda McMahon, to put out anti-Shiite propaganda. Now, I would have assumed that just the basic general stereotyping of characters in WWE would be anti-Shiite, but also in the context of it being anti-Sunni and just anti-Muslim in general. Just as a, you know how wrestling cliches can get. That's kind of how I would assume it to be. The idea that it would be very narrowly targeted to just being anti-Shiite is that's something special there. I'm curious. I'm curious about this now. Maybe there's reason to believe they are getting a good return on their investment here if they get to use WWE to put out propaganda against its regional adversaries. Yeah, 2017 was the first year they did a Saudi show. 2018 was bad. A lot of the Saudi shows under Vince as head of creative were shit, like some of the worst shows they've ever put on. The Saudis don't respect or understand the WWE. They asked Vince to bring in Yokozuna to the event, but he died years ago. Yeah, Yokozuna died a long-ass time. Wait, when did they ask him, though? They didn't know that, so they brought in a sumo wrestler instead. Wait a second. Did WWE, just get another sumo wrestler and be like, this is Yokozuna. This is the guy. You wanted the guy. Here's the guy. Maybe they can get away with doing something like that. If they didn't even know the dude was dead, then, how would they recognize? And a lot of the Saudi shows back in 2017, 2019 were all built off of nostalgia matches with Undertaker, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels. And they were all at varying stages of bad to horrible. I mean, all of those dudes are in their 60s and horribly broken. Thankfully, the last time they went to Saudi a few months ago, Triple H was in charge of creative because Vince retired, and it was actually a good show with no propaganda and a focus on talent. Well, I mean, that's going to be out the window now. The WWE's partnership with the Saudi government for a 10-year deal of super shows in the country was already controversial before last Friday's card, dubbed the Greatest Royal Rumble. It was one thing to run shows in Saudi Arabia, which WWE has been doing for the last few years, but this was different. WWE being unable to get women on the card was an issue, or in the stands, unless accompanied by a male guardian. That sounds accurate. But that wasn't necessarily a new problem as much as a conspicuous one. This after female wrestlers had been allowed to perform, albeit with concessions, bodysuits covering basically anything below the neck, in Abu Dhabi a few months earlier. The Saudi government paying what has been reported as being $25 million just for this one show, or more than $65 million if you believe the British Sun tabloid. Felt like a sign that they would get WWE to do whatever they wanted. I mean, if $25 million is easy spending for them for just one show, then why wouldn't they be capable of purchasing WWE in its entirety if they wanted to? The only thing that would be stopping them is, again, something from the FTC or some other arm of the federal government stopping them. Still, during the build-up to this event, there was little more than the usual hard sells and some talk of what a beautiful city Jeddah is and how wonderful life is in the Desert Kingdom. The show, though, proved blatantly, bizarrely propagandistic. A little over 2 hours into the 5-hour card, a video package was shown highlighting WWE's tryouts for Saudi talent that week. 4 of the best prospects were introduced in the middle of the ring by announcer Mike Rome, who threw to them with basic questioning. After 2 of them spoke, the entrance music for Iranian-American WWE wrestler Arya Daivari played as he and his real-life brother Sean, who it should be noted has not been on the WWE roster for over a decade, walked into the ring. Sean waved an Iranian flag while Rome introduced the brothers as being from Iran, even though Arya's WWE profile correctly lists his hometown as Minneapolis. Oh no. Well, is he of Iranian descent though? Like, are his parents are his parents like Iranian immigrants or something? Or was that just like a total fabrication? As soon as the brothers appeared on the entrance stage, there was audible tension in the crowd, which quickly boiled over into deafening boos. While the crowd likely didn't know about Sean's involvement in a WWE storyline that most closely mirrored real-life terrorism. What? While the crowd likely didn't know about Sean's involvement in the WWE storyline that most closely mirrored real-life terrorism. And that's a link. What? I don't want to read all that. This could spin off into so many different rabbit holes. With an attack clearly designed to resemble beheading videos. Oh man, my prediction wasn't too far off. It's not as if it would help. After the Daivaris hit the ring, they trash-talked the Saudi wrestlers about Iran being superior. With what was, in all honesty, pretty standard and benign verbiage, only to get bested by the local heroes in a quick confrontation. While xenophobia in wrestling is nothing new, using a conflict rooted in religious strife absolutely is. Let alone, I'm guessing that's supposed to be let alone in the context of what was effectively a Saudi infomercial. On Tuesday, Arya Daivari issued a statement trying to differentiate the angle and his on-screen persona from his real life, giving what was effectively a non-apology and later adding that he received death threats from Iranians. Oh, Lord. On Tuesday afternoon, he also blasted BBC Persia for doing a story on the in-ring segment without any mention of his statement about it. It's so weird then that they're so focused. Why would they be so hyper-focused on trying to use WWE to promote, their so-called progressivism then? Why did they choose WWE? Of all things, is it just because it's monetarily accessible? is that really the reason? Why not go after like the NFL, or if they know nothing, if they have no functioning knowledge of WWE current events, why would they be so stringent upon obtaining it for its propaganda purposes? How not progressive of a country do you have to be when the WWE is what you're using to promote your progressivism? The propaganda push had started much earlier in the card, right after the playing of the Saudi and American national anthems, an opening video, and a fireworks display, when the broadcast cut to the ringside announcers for their first on-camera. 50 superstars vying for the coveted trophy that represents historic implications, began color commentary Corey Graves. As we celebrate Saudi Arabia's progression for cultural diversity and the Vision 2030 plan. 3 days later on Monday Night Raw, the WWE claimed credit for that progression, with lead announcer Michael Cole throwing to highlights of the event that was the first step at bringing change to Saudi Arabia, the greatest Royal Rumble. Jesus Christ. Super masturbatory there. Saudi gender norms, meanwhile, ended up taking center stage over the weekend in some of the initial fallout from the show. During the event, WWE aired a video that has been all over its programming for weeks, which is designed to hammer home that going forward, all pay-per-view events will now feature wrestlers from flagship weekly Monday Night Raw and SmackDown live television shows. The package, built around wrestlers singing, lip-syncing to a song about the change, includes multiple female wrestlers, some of whom are in their in-ring outfits. 11 hours after the show went off air, the Saudi General Sports Authority tweeted a statement apologizing for the video. A full translation by Reddit user Compromise, which is consistent with the partial translations from news outlets like The Independent, reads, quote, "The General Sports Authority would like to apologize to the viewers and attendees of last night's WWE event that took place in Jeddah over the indecent scene involving women that appeared as an ad before a segment. It would like to confirm its total disapproval of this in the shadow of its commitment to eliminate anything that goes against the community's values. The authority has made sure to ban showing of any segment that involves women wrestling or any scenes related to it, and stipulated that to the company. Ban any segment that involves women wrestling or any scenes related to it. What scenes related to women wrestling? The authority also disapproved any promotional stuff with pictures or videos showing women in an indecent way, and emphasized on commitment of this rule. And it's a commitment that the authority would still commit to forever in all of its events and programs. Yeesh. Commit to forever. Meanwhile, though, he was not advertised for the show, and there was even a segment where he explicitly said that he wouldn't be there. Fans and media members alike were surprised when they realized that Sami Zayn wasn't there. It surprised them since Zayn, real name Rami Sebe, is a Muslim who speaks Arabic fluently. However, he's also of Syrian descent and has been raising money for mobile medical units to treat civilians who have been injured in the Syrian civil war. Civilians who may have been hurt by weapons provided by the Saudi government. Oh shit. This was all the more conspicuous because Zayn was brought by WWE to Saudi Arabia for a 3-show swing in Riyadh in 2014, long after the Saudi role in the Syrian conflict was reported worldwide. Still, he was brought on that tour at a point before he had even joined the WWE's main roster, instead being part of NXT, its development brand, and even got a showcase of sorts with Cesaro, who had always had particularly exciting matches with. While there are conflicting reports as to if being left off the Greatest Royal Rumble was WWE's decision or Zayn's, WWE's vague statement on the matter appears as just the former. WWE is committed to embracing individuals from all backgrounds while respecting local customs and cultural differences around the world. Those two things could live in direct contradiction of one another. You gotta choose one or the other sometimes. While any kind of concrete financial details will not be available until WWE releases its financials for Q2 this summer, one thing is for sure: they're doing it again. It was announced on Friday that WWE has another Saudi Super Show coming to the capital of Riyadh in November.
Also talk news, maybe Vince McMahon isn't even selling WWE at all now. What the hell is going on? Vince McMahon is also being sued. What the hell is going on? And Ollie's review of Dynamite.
Support Wrestle Talk!
Alright guys, everybody just calm down. I know yesterday was a lot to handle, but let's all just take some deep breaths. Okay, now let's see what's the latest. Vince McMahon might not sell WWE after all. Yeah, that checks out. Yet despite multiple sources such as Bodyslam.net's Cassidy Haynes and DAZN's Stephen Muehlhausen reporting yesterday morning that the WWE and Saudi Public Investment Fund had agreed to a sale of the company, things are now looking much less clear. There were outlets claiming the deal was not a done deal at various points in the day, such as Sean Ross Sapp, Brandon Thurston, Ariel Helwani, and John.
He looks like he's not super thrilled to be taking a picture with this dude. Like, Vince McMahon seems fine. He almost seems proud, but old Triple H here, who kind of looks pretty rough. I don't know. I guess I hadn't seen him in a while. There's something about his beard. It's too uniform. It's too flat. It almost looks like a hobo beard. But it looks like he's not super thrilled to be taking a picture next to this dude. He's also like a colossus next to him, which is also kind of funny.
Albert, the latter of which said the reports were completely false on Twitter. Adding to that was CNBC's David Faber, who revealed that he had been told by many prospective buyers that they are very much unclear on whether Vince will indeed...
I think that was the video we watched earlier.
After all. Now, despite the rampant rumors, WWE also importantly haven't commented on the Saudi rumors publicly, leaving the whole thing very much up in the air to the public at this moment in time. It's important to note, however, that although nothing has been outright announced publicly, doesn't mean that the whole thing is a lie. lie. As Wrestling Observer Radio's Brian Alvarez pointed out on his latest show, do you know that when WCW was sold, there were still people denying that it had been sold after it had been sold? The exact same thing that happened when UFC was sold. He went on to say that just because there are rumors currently, there may still be a deal coming and it may be agreed in principle but with work to do. So basically, we still don't know. Nothing is clear. Except for one bit we do know, Vince is being sued again. Since Vince's return 6 days ago seemingly happened without much pushback in the end, primarily because he brought back George Barrios and Michelle.
Crazy that was just 6 days ago.
Against his return resigned or were forced out, it seems his actions may not go without consequence after all, as he now has a class action lawsuit on his hands, precisely about this return to the company. Bloomberg have reported that the suit comes from WWE shareholder Scott A. Fellows, who, according to court documents, is attempting to sue McMahon for the manner in which he returned to the company. The filing states that McMahon violated WWE's charter and breached his fiduciary duty as controlling stockholder with his return to the company as the chairman of WWE's board of directors. The report states that McMahon's return alongside his cronies Barrios and Michelle Wilson was made in order to remove certain directors who opposed him. The 3 board members that were removed included Joellen Leon Dillon, Jeffrey R. Speed, and Alan M. Wexler, while according to an 8K filing by WWE, another 2 board members, Manjit Singh and Ignace Lahoud, resigned from the board due to not agreeing with Mr. McMahon's return, Manjit Singh being the primary person who is investigating Vince McMahon from the board's own investigations. According to Bloomberg, neither WWE or Vince have decided to comment on the impending suit, despite being reached out to. The full details on the action being taken on McMahon are available on WrestleTalk.com, so be sure to check them out, as well as any and all updates on the situation going forward, which will also be on the site too.
This
That's
video is
wild.
sponsored by...
Like, I mean, you run the risk. You run the risk with a hostile takeover. All right, I guess that's all the news he has on that. Well, I mean, I guess that's pretty much the long and short of it, huh? We gotta wait and see how it develops. It's an interesting point that he mentions that the people who were denying WCW and UFC being sold after it had been sold. It could be a similar case here where, yes, this Saudi deal is agreed to in principle and is going to, in fact, happen, but, all of the I's haven't been dotted and all the T's haven't been crossed. I don't know if that lawsuit has any effect on the likelihood of the sale, if it makes it less attractive to a buyer, especially if Vince McMahon remains dedicated to staying, in his leadership position there. I don't know. But it's a fascinating development nonetheless. This is crazy. Like this whole thing is wild. It's literally a storyline out of a television drama. Like literally Succession. It's literally Succession. Like there's gotta be like a movie of some sort made, a documentary or a dramatization made about Vince McMahon in general. Just the dude's life in general is a chaotic ride. He's not a good person. He's not a good guy. He's not a good human being. And, I am very interested to hear about the family dynamics that go into all of this too. I kind of feel sorry even a little bit for Stephanie McMahon. Like that's harsh. That's harsh, man. You're forcing your own daughter out. Stephanie McMahon being forced to resign is sad because she was doing so much better than Vince clearly deserves the job more. Yeah, that's an even worse component about it, is that like Vince McMahon wasn't running the company very well before he was ousted. Sometimes you just slip. He's been doing this for God knows how many decades now, and it was apparent for a long time that Stephanie McMahon was going to be the heir, and it seemed like, contrary to usual trends, where the children, the heirs, end up being worse than the people that they take over. You hear about fail sons and fail daughters all the time. It was like a really rare instance where Stephanie McMahon actually seemed to have been better than her dad, but this is how it goes, I guess, for this particular family. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see if it all plays out in court, if it plays out in the ring, if it plays out in the tabloids or the news. However which way, it's gotta come to a head at some point one of these days. And it may end up resulting in WWE being a wholly owned subsidiary of the Saudi royal family, which I mean, if I had to choose which I'd prefer, WWE being owned by Saudi Arabia or WWE being owned or merged into AEW, much as I would hate to say it, I've got to say I'd prefer the AEW outcome. You can't turn a blind eye to not to sound ableist, but you can't turn a blind eye to Saudi Arabia's human rights offenses. Yeah, this was reported as well. Just more conjecture about Saudi Arabia's effort to purchase WWE, with claims that they're being helped out by J.P. Morgan. So, that's heavy hitters. They're bringing in the big guns to try to get this deal done. They may have done it, but we'll find out in a couple of weeks, I imagine. What I'm most worried about as a fan is the creative. Triple H has been trying to fix the BS Vince left behind. He's been striving to make better TV and improve talent relations, bringing people that Vince fired back. Now Vince could be in charge again if the TV shows and PPVs and creatives, and that would be charging it of the TV shows and PPVs and creatives, and that would be disastrous. I don't want Triple H forced to leave too. Maybe that's for the better, to be honest with you. I mean, if Triple H and Stephanie McMahon can bolt and take a ton of that talent with them, there's no reason why they can't create their own competitor. I mean, I know that's not the optimal solution. Creating a competitive wrestling organization from the ground up is no easy shakes. But I would imagine they wouldn't have a hard time, finding willing investors. There's plenty of amateur league circuits all around the country that they could probably just snap up and, take the names and just kind of build their own thing. If Vince is dedicated to, taking over and running the show the way he wants to run it, I mean, that's probably their best. They're not just gonna, retire, and I mean, I guess they could just retire and, live in the Bahamas and just live off their WWE money for the rest of their lives. I see there's no reason why they couldn't, but if they really wanted to continue to pursue being stewards of professional wrestling, of the professional wrestling universe, but they don't want to do it, at the behest of Vince McMahon, then, the only other option is to take your talents out of WWE. And that's the only viable option. Triple H and Stephanie will go all elite. I mean, I don't know if they'll go all elite. That seems like maybe a bridge too far. I don't know if all elite necessarily would I don't know if All Elite would necessarily want them. Maybe, sure. But again, that would also still, to me, that would be a lesser version of the merger option. It's not a merger, but it's still talent floating around just those two entities. Similar to what was going on in the 90s when it was largely nationally just WCW and WWF. And that served benefits. It's fine. Like, that kind of two-party rivalry can definitely drum up a lot of drama and excitement. It's the same reason for whatever reason, people in general, Americans in particular, but people in general, they just love a dichotomy. They just love the two-hander. It's Coke versus Pepsi, it's Nintendo versus Sega, it's Sony versus Microsoft, it's Marvel versus DC. It's McDonald's versus Burger King. It's, I guess in the 80s it was Nike versus Reebok. I don't know I don't know what the shoe comparison is now, but it's always two things. It's Windows and Apple. It's Honda or Toyota. It's Chevy or Ford. It's always a two that we just need to have two. We just gotta have two that fight each other out so that we could pick a side, stick a flag in one side, and then demonize the other. It's always been that way. It works best that way from, I guess, a capital standpoint. And I guess right now the primary opponents are WWE and AEW. I feel most bad for the wrestlers who got fired and brought back, having this Vince return looming over their heads, because Vince has no issue cutting people he doesn't like to save a buck. Now it's WWE and AEW. Yeah, exactly. And that's fine for me because I like AEW. AEW is cool. Like I said at the start of this, I've been to every AEW event whenever they come to Austin. And it's always fun. I've never had a not fun time at an AEW show. It's a good product they put out there. And it's cool because they do it at the smaller arenas. So it just feels more intimate and more fun. I've never been to a WWE event, but they always hold them at. They always hold, like, whenever they do Raw or something, it's always at like the big amphitheater down in San Antonio and shit. So I would imagine that would just naturally have a different vibe to it. But I like the vibe of the AEW events. Hey everybody, thanks for watching the video. If you liked what you just saw, hit the like. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. I'd appreciate it if you did both. They would be very good for the channel and help me build the community here. If you have any kind of comments or opinions or anything like that, by all means drop them in the comment section below. I like engaging with y'all, want to do more of that. So thank you again and see you next time.